You've been a wonderful audience, I hear, and I hope that you'll continue to extend that to me. Where I grew up in rural Western Australia, it is the place of the Noongar people. I did not realise I was part of this place until I was contacted about a school reunion. The classmates who contacted me were all Noongar mob that I went to school with, and they had surprised me by saying that they knew I lived a long way away from Western Australia and needed to give me plenty of warning to travel back home for the reunion. My friends said they couldn't have the reunion without me because I was part of the family. I was amazed and delighted. I felt honoured that they considered me part of the family. I have not been back to Calabarin for many years. I was born in Noongar country, but I had left and made a life elsewhere. My parents retired to the coast. My grandparents and other relations rested in the local cemetery. Yet from my Noongar friends, I saw my connection to my home in another light. I was part of the Calabarin mob. It was me that didn't realise it. It has taken me a lifetime to realise that this is my culture, as much, if not more, than the culture that my ancestors left behind on distant shores 6 generations ago, and what culture they were able to preserve or adapt in their new homes. Those traditions rate in the hundreds of years and some extend to the thousands of years. They are so young. They have not withstood the time on the planet that the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders have. 40,000 years or more is a long, long time. I wish I knew more about the culture of the land I was born in and where I raise my children, the culture of the Indigenous Australian people. Who was taught Indigenous history when they were at school? Indigenous language. Indigenous dance. Indigenous music. Who has children at school at the moment? Out of those children, who's been taught Indigenous history? Raise your hands up. Beautiful. Indigenous language. Now look around, people. Hold your hands up high, the people whose children are being taught Indigenous language. Indigenous dance. Anyone? Indigenous music. 1, 2, 3. No Indigenous language, word, song, or history, local or national, was taught in my time at school. Clearly that was just a little while ago. 5 decades later, my children are taught no Indigenous language, word, song, or Indigenous history. Oh, I've given it away now. In 10 years of their school time, they have seen Indigenous dances at school twice. I said to my friend as we watched the Gubby Gubby dancers, who are awesome, why is it something so awesome as our local culture is so few and far between? There is just one group of dancers to many schools and events. I watched a TEDx talk on Indigenisation by Jeanette Armstrong, PhD, Okanagan Indigenous language specialist and traditional keeper of knowledge. She speaks about learning local language and knowledge of the environment and about becoming connected to and aware of where you live, becoming indigenised, the process of adapting to and evolving to your environment, becoming indigenised as a means of sustainability. Indigenisation to our place where we live, our environment, what we grow, what we eat, how we connect with our wildlife, their stories, and our traditions. It is a recipe for the preservation for sustainability. Indigenous knowledge is respect for our culture. Knowledge of Indigenous culture activates our inner custodian. There is currently a national project to close the gap with Indigenous Australians, and one of the means is digital literacy. Digital literacy supports Indigenous people to become digitally literate, which brings me to the very new technology, robots. Robotic technology has developed to the point now where it can talk in numerous languages, converse, walk, sing, dance, connect to the internet, send email, read your email for you, tell jokes, play chess and soccer. It can tell animated stories, it can teach, and it can learn. Imagine you're in a class and your students are learning Indigenous names of Australian animals, both local and regional. You download the apps for your robot. The robot accurately produces the language, both using recorded authentic voice or synthesised voice, shares words and meanings, demonstrates the calls, dance moves, and context for the names. It tells the story of why the crow. Plays a game where children guess the right Indigenous words for the animal they hear, and teaches the dance of the emu. Oral histories, language, dance, music, stories, games, traditions can become available through technology in an engaging, three-dimensional representation. Building apps for robots to share local knowledge and culture is not a replacement or a substitute for Indigenous people. It's a means for us to learn quickly and widely. It is a means for Indigenous children and adults to learn their language and to hear the stories of other Indigenous Australians. My Noongar friend that I grew up with said that she wished she had learned the language of her people. I wish for that for her as well. How can we make that happen? The Queensland State Library has a massive and precious archive of Indigenous data. Preserving the original language is the preservation of ancient cultural treasure, not just for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders and Queenslanders, but for everyone. That is part of our heritage. So sadly, these languages are endangered and could disappear in the next few decades. More than 100 Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander languages and dialects were once spoken. Today, around 50 of these remain, with less than 20 being used as first language, predominantly in the North and Torres Strait Islands. What can we do? We can access libraries, local and state. We can access scholars who've researched and documented culture, language and knowledge. Access local Indigenous people for stories, knowledge and their experiences. Kids in school can learn how to code and build apps for robots. Coding is now in the national curriculum. Robot apps can be uploaded and shared across the country and around the globe. Why robots? Robots are neutral, non-judgmental, non-political, gender neutral, race neutral, age neutral, religion neutral, and opinion neutral. Building Indigenous robot apps preserves the knowledge which is there for current and for future generations. Is the technology capable? Absolutely. It's arrived, particularly in education. Can we access it? Yes, we can. Do you want to? Do you think that your cultural knowledge for environment at 250 years is everything? Wait till you get to 40,000 years. That's when it starts to get interesting. Could we benefit from that knowledge? A culture that has endured 40,000 years, where the next oldest is probably 6,000 or 7,000 years, do you think there's something there? I do. It is not the Indigenous Australians who need to close the gap by becoming digitally literate. It is the non-Indigenous Australians who need to become indigenously literate. Can we become indigenously literate? Is there a program for that? The robot will allow us a three-dimensional interactive experience. It is not a replacement. It is an extension. It is a tool, a very powerful tool. Perhaps it will give the opportunity to feel culturally connected to this wonderful land and its ancient people. Paul Watson saw in the time that he did that intervention was required to prevent extinction. Paul tells the story of how whales saved his life, an Indigenous creature with its ancient knowledge. Paul, you could say, has become indigenised to the sea, and particularly whales. It's become part of his culture. Let's get off the air-conditioned tourist bus and embrace our culture. I am Wodjala. That means white person in Noongar language. I honour my ancestors in the ancient lands, both here and there. I honour the traditional owners and peoples of this land. I was born in Noongar country. The Noongar people in Calabarin call me family. I'm so proud to be part of that mob. Thank you.